If you've ever poured your heart, money, and every free weekend into your raised beds only to watch your plants shrivel, stall, or mysteriously die, trust me, you're not alone. Raised beds should be the easiest, most productive way to garden, but they can also become a silent disaster zone, where mistakes hide under the soil, destroying your harvest before you even realize what went wrong. On Soilpower, I always say, raised beds magnify your mistakes and reward your precision. When something is off even just a little, it shows up fast. That's exactly why so many gardeners struggle, and why you might feel like your raised bed is cursed. But today we're breaking that curse. This is your ultimate Soilpower guide to the 7 mistakes killing raised bed gardens right now, and more importantly, how to fix them using real, practical steps backed by experience, not guesswork. Let's turn your raised bed from a nightmare into the most productive patch of soil you've ever seen. Using over-concentrated homemade boosts is honestly the fastest way to kill a raised bed. Let's start with the mistake I see everywhere, especially among DIY-loving gardeners who follow my Soilpower experimental videos and love making fermented plant juice, compost teas, fermented brews, and plant extracts. The problem isn't that homemade boosts don't work. The problem is that most people apply them raw or way too strong. In raised beds, this is deadly. Because your soil volume is limited, even a small overdose throws everything off balance. You can burn roots, stall growth, overload nitrogen, or worst of all, wipe out beneficial microbes. When that happens, your plants aren't just stressed, they're helpless. The fix? Dilution is everything. Whenever you make a fermented plant juice, always dilute it at 1 tablespoon per 1 liter of water, or for delicate plants, 1 to 500, which is about 2 milliliters per liter of water. I'll break down the exact measurement for different raised bed sizes later in this article, so stay with me. Once you master this ratio, your homemade boosts will stop killing your garden and start waking it up. Soil depth problems are honestly the secret killer nobody talks about. Most gardeners underestimate how important soil depth is in raised beds. They look at the bed, think it's full, and assume roots will be fine. But roots don't care how nice your bed looks from the outside. They care about depth, drainage, and room to breathe. If your bed is shallower than 20 to 25 centimeters, your plants will suffer in ways that look like nutrient deficiency, pest attack, or sun stress, when really the roots simply have nowhere to go. Shallow beds lead to stunted plants, heat stress because shallow soil heats fast, poor root structure, waterlogging during the rainy season, and drying rapidly during the hot season. Raised beds act like large containers. If the roots can't stretch, neither can your harvest. If your soil is too shallow, the fix is simple. Top it up. Add more mix. Give those roots the vertical real estate they need. Once you do, you'll be amazed how quickly your plants recover. Wrong soil mix ratios are another big one. Most beds are compromised from day one. A raised bed lives or dies by its soil mix. That's why on Soilpower, I always encourage gardeners to think of raised beds as ecosystems, not piles of dirt. Many gardeners pack in too much compost because it feels nutritious. Others use straight garden soil because it's free. Both choices lead to misery. The ideal raised bed soil mix is 40% topsoil, 40% compost, and 20% aeration material. This aeration material can be perlite, pumice, coarse sand, or rice husks, anything that increases drainage and creates air pockets. Compost alone is too rich, holds too much moisture, shrinks as it breaks down, and becomes dense like mud. Garden soil alone compacts and suffocates roots, but together, balanced, they create the perfect marriage of nutrients, structure, moisture retention, and airflow. If your bed is struggling, this ratio is the first thing you should fix. Planting too close is another common issue, when good plants become bad neighbors. Raised beds encourage us to plant intensively, but there's a fine line between efficiency and suffocation. Plants need light, airflow, space to spread roots, and breathing room. When you plant too close in a raised bed, you create the perfect microclimate for pests, fungal disease, and nutrient competition. What looks like healthy early growth quickly turns into a jungle where every plant is fighting for survival. The fix is easy space according to mature size, not seedling size. If your tomatoes are shading your peppers or your kale is choking your herbs, you're planting too close. When you respect spacing, your raised bed becomes a powerhouse of growth instead of a battlefield. Watering the surface is a common mistake with compounding damage. You know, a lot of gardeners just sprinkle water on the surface and figure that's enough. But since raised beds drain faster and heat up quicker, shallow watering really only encourages shallow roots. And shallow roots, well, that means weak plants. They end up relying on frequent watering and just collapse when it gets hot or dry. Plus, these plants can't reach deeper nutrients, so they might look hungry, even if your soil is actually packed with goodness. The solution here is deep watering. You want to soak your raised bed until the water gets down to root depth. Slow and deep is the golden rule, folks. If your water's running off too quickly, that's a sign your soil needs more organic matter and better aeration. Once you start watering deeply, you'll notice stronger stems, tougher leaves, and plants that don't freak out on a sunny day. Fermented plant juice, or FPJ, is seriously powerful. But, like all powerful things, timing is everything. FPJ is loaded with growth hormones, enzymes, and micronutrients. But if you use it at the wrong stage, you can really confuse your plants. Young seedlings don't need a blast of growth hormones. Flowering plants don't want vegetative signals. Fruiting plants definitely don't want a spike of nitrogen. Here's the truth. Most raised bed failures aren't caused by pests or disease. They happen because gardeners are guessing. The right approach is actually pretty simple. Use FPJ made from vigorous green shoots during early growth. Then, switch to FPJ made from flowering or fruiting plants once your garden moves into reproductive mode. Always dilute it properly and don't just change the formula on a whim. Your plants will follow the signals you send, so just make sure you're sending the right ones. Too many gardeners guess the soil level, guess the moisture, guess the spacing, guess the fertilizer strength, and even guess the FPJ dilution. Raised beds, honestly, are unforgiving. If you treat them casually, they'll fail fast. Every successful raised bed gardener I know uses at least a moisture meter and a measuring spoon. And here's why. Even small corrections in raised beds make a huge difference. When you measure instead of eyeballing it, you go from random outcomes to consistent success. It's the difference between failure and a thriving harvest. Since so many raised bed problems start with homemade fertilizers used incorrectly, here's the exact recipe you should be using. Take 1 kilogram of fresh, vigorous plant material, like young leafy shoots, tips, or fast-growing greens. Add 1 kilogram of brown sugar. Mix it all together until the sugar draws out the liquid. Pack it loosely into a jar, cover with a breathable cloth, and let it ferment for 5 to 7 days. Then strain and store the liquid. That's your FPJ. Now, never use it raw. Dilute it at 1 tablespoon per 1 liter of water, or 2 milliliters per liter for delicate plants. This dilution is basically your raised bed's life insurance. For correct FPJ application in raised beds, here are the Soilpower ratios. A 4x4 foot raised bed needs 4 to 5 liters of diluted FPJ mix per feeding. A 4x8 foot bed needs 10 liters, and an 8x8 foot bed, you'll want 15 to 20 liters. Apply FPJ every 7 to 10 days depending on the weather. If it's really hot or super rainy, adjust how often you apply it, but don't mess with the concentration. Remember, FPJ isn't a fertilizer replacement. It's a biological activator and plant stimulator. Use it as part of a holistic routine. Now here's why you should experiment with different FPJ sources. On Soilpower, I always encourage direct comparisons. If you want to really level up your garden, try this. Harvest 2 different plants, maybe comfrey and pumpkin tips. Make FPJ from each, using the same recipe, and label them clearly. Take 2 identical test plants and treat each with 1 FPJ. Watch for differences in growth, leaf color, fruiting, and root strength. In about 2 to 4 weeks, you'll know exactly which plant gives you the strongest FPJ for your climate and your soil. Gardening gets powerful when you stop guessing and start testing. Every mistake on this list, honestly, is fixable. Every raised bed can be brought back to life. With the right depth, the right soil mix, consistent spacing, deep watering, careful FPJ use, and measured applications, your bed will stop fighting you and start working with you. This is the Soilpower way. Gardening built on clarity, not confusion. Precision, not guesswork. Understanding, not just chasing trends. Your raised bed can become the most productive part of your garden. You just need the right information, and now you've got it. If you found this guide helpful, make sure you subscribe to Soilpower, share this article with your gardening friends, and help someone else escape their raised bed nightmare. Your garden grows better when we grow together.